So at Recirc IT, we often get asked what problems that we solve and why is it that an organization might need to engage with us compared to their typical resellers. More often than not, when we open a conversation with a client, we say, I've already got an existing reseller. Why is it I would need to talk to you? I just wanted to walk through a particular story that might resonate with you. This, by the way, is an oil rig, which is located about 2 hours north of Darwin by helicopter ride, I should add. So the situation was that I had a client that had called our business that said essentially, we just require a 3850 model Cisco switch. Now, I didn't have a lot of time to actually talk to that person. The person was in a rush. And just said, look, I don't have time to explain the situation now, but do you have a particular model of this? We said we did, and that product was, around $2,000. This was a couple of years ago. So eventually I got to catch up with that client when I was across with them in Perth and got to understand what made up this story. Why was he in such a rush with me? And why is it that things needed to happen so quickly? So the issue was that they had an outage on the platform, again, which was 2 hours away from Darwin, and they needed to use, obviously they keep the spares on the rig, and they needed to use one of the spares to replace the outage on the rig. So his call to me was, I essentially need one of these model of switches. So, however, he'd been through a process before that with his existing partner to say, I require a 3850 model of switch because I've used one of the spares. I need to replace that spare with that current model. So what the actual OEM came back with is they said, we can provide this model of switch instead because this one is no longer available for sale. So this one has gone end of sale, essentially. So customer said, fine, if you can provide me a quote for that 9300. So that quote came around, the $10,000 mark. He went to push that through. One quick question that he raised before he did that was, is there interoperability between the different models of switches? So that one is essentially going to sit in a stack with this one. So is there interoperability between the two model of switches? The answer to that was no. Cisco provide no interoperability between current generation and previous generations of products. So the customer said, okay, well, what do I do? So the answer from Cisco in this particular case was, well, you need to replace the whole stack of switches within that. So there was, I think, about 6 in the stack. So actually what we need is 6 of those models, which is the, coming out around the $60,000 mark. So he then took that back to the business and said, we need to replace all of these because we can no longer acquire this particular product. So what that meant is then within this rig, we then had to look at a maintenance window. We essentially need to take out all of the old switches, replace them with the new ones. So what that meant was to the business, they had to look at a maintenance window of around 4 hours to roll out the replacement. When they took that to the business, when they took that to the plant, what that essentially meant was an outage window to them was something in the region of $2 million. So what had been created here, given some of the OEM rules that the product was end of sale, there's no interoperability between them, that the OEMs had essentially created this $2 million problem out of what was essentially what could have been fixed with a $2,000 price tag. So this is the reason why we got the call at the 11th hour. Was essentially all they needed was one particular switch just to replace that particular spare that was held out in the market. So if any of this kind of rings true, if you do find yourselves sort of ushered along this path where as they weren't even considering doing a refresh project, but this situation, this $2 million price tag was essentially put to them. We're a business that operates outside of all of this framework here. So essentially, if you do want to work outside of end of sale models, end of life models, and different programs, then this is what our business is about. We essentially helped them avoid that $2 million problem, and we delivered the replacement switch, which was a $2,000 switch. So if that rings true, if you've come into contact with any of that, then we'd obviously love a conversation with you.